essay this week about motherhood.
Yeah.
And I feel like that scene with the boy and then the images of the faces of the actresses, that blur kind of
I have an idea.
Yeah.
I have an idea about it. I wasn't really sure, because it's shown twice. It's shown first in the beginning.
Right.
And it's sort of, you never see the face come into focus. It's sort of like there is a literal screen divide between the boy trying to reach his mother. I wonder if it could literally be that simple. Like, I wonder if it is just, I am a child who wants his mother's love. And she's on a screen. She is an actress, which obviously means I interpret it as Elizabeth. But who knows? I mean, it could just be like a just in general, like, children who feel neglected by their mothers. But I kind of took it as he is reaching out for her and she's not interested.
Right. And, you know, the first time I saw this, I thought it was kind of like a boy coming to puberty type of thing.
Also that.
Yeah, where, you know, he sees the actresses and he's kind of aroused a little bit.
Yeah.
But then the next time, I kind of saw the mother-son aspect.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that makes the film powerful is that all of these interpretations are correct. There's an ambiguity that isn't sloppiness. It's there on purpose. And I love that aspect of it. I also think there's another layer, kind of meta, if you will, because right before we show him reaching to the screen with the actresses' faces, he's reaching directly into the camera lens. And it's sort of, you know, I interpret that as, you know, we in the audience are reaching for a connection with these images.
Yeah.
And, you know, however much empathy we have, we can't enter into their world. We're separated by the fact that this is a construct, that we're watching, you know, something fabricated, a film that's being made.
And I
thinly veiled exploration of a homosexual relationship.
Sure. And I think that because I think that people, the consensus that I get during this time was that homosexuality, obviously people knew about it, but it was seen as like deviant sociopathic behavior. So it's interesting.
You would be arrested for it.
Exactly, correct. So I think that it is sort of a backward film because the main character is this gay sociopath, essentially, and that's just the stereotype that I think that people associated it with. So it's a product of its time, for sure. It's a little backward. Not a little, it's pretty backward.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting the way that they were able, interesting in general, the way that you were able to subvert the Hays Code and just do, if you were paying attention, as we talked about the chicken, there's a story in the film about Philip, who is the lover who has some guilt over the murder of their classmate. There's a story about him that he may or may not have been good at strangling chickens. And there's a bunch of different references. They eat chicken off of the grave, quote unquote, of David. And there's a story about strangling chickens. And it's all very wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like but it's fascinating the way that they were able to subvert the Hays Code. And we were talking about it earlier, and just how you kind of can't believe that a film like that was. You think of, you know, these sort of safe movies that were made in that time, but it's not true at all.
No, I think it's a very subversive film, and
yes.
I agree with what you're saying, Meara, about how it's kind of definitely of its time. At the same time, almost simultaneously, it's very it's very almost empowering in the sense that behind the scenes, both Farley Granger and John Dahl, the two stars, were gay men living in Hollywood. And even though they're playing sociopathic villains, the kind of idea that they could express, even in veiled terms, to men who love each other must have been, you know, a kind of subversive thrill. And I know from reading excerpts from Farley Granger's autobiography that they were very aware of the nature of the characters' relationships.
Okay. Awesome.
It feels like, I don't know, because when we see, for me, we didn't talk about it, but we talked about it as we were eating our bagels this morning. When Elizabeth sees the image of the monk self-immolating, sets himself on fire during Vietnam War.
Yeah.
I think maybe there's a connection here, and you know me, I'm always trying to make a history connection.
Right.
But it was such a strange, turbulent time. It was the first time that we had been in a really unpopular war. And maybe it's sort of like this whole thing is a very dreamlike, turbulent event because the world was in such turmoil.
Right.
Maybe there's a connection there that it's just so, like, awful. You'd rather be in a dreamlike state than have to witness the stuff that's going on.
Right.
I think that's completely valid.
I actually was just thinking, there's a movie I've seen recently, and hopefully I don't botch the title, a pigeon on a branch, the existence or whatever.
Yeah.
That movie is it's obviously way different than Persona,
right.
But they do have, I'm not going to be a spoiler here, but there is one scene that's a dream sequence that is so out of place, but it's so disturbing, and it also involves the audience, and
is it the giant turbine thing with the...
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And also that movie is a pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on a
I totally
Great.
botched
For
that.
anyone that wants to seek it out, it was weird.
But you know what? It's one of my favorite movies of the year, and
It's impressive.
I'm bringing that comparison to that film because in Persona, I feel like the problems that Alma is dealing with the problems that Alma's dealing with seems minor compared to
the world events.
World events.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yes, she's dealing with some emotional turmoil with the pregnancy and the abortion.
Right.
And she's obviously, like, kind of going psychotic in her head. But yet, then you see these real, very disturbing events alongside her losing her mind. And I
wonder if almost like a stand-in for the world was
okay.
I don't know. Yeah. If that influence comes from German Expressionism, where do you get that idea from? Like, how did he get that idea to do that? Like, I don't know. Like, did he just decide to try it one day? And that's why when Hitchcock calls it a failure, I'm like, I know that you can't see this through your own lens because it's your work.
Yeah.
But
I think it appealed to him because he was a technical virtuoso, and it was a challenge, certainly for the technology of the time. Mm-hmm. It's also, it's the first, we've been talking a lot about the cinematography and the way that the camera moved and the 10-minute cuts, but I think it's also interesting to me that this is the first Hitchcock film that he made in color, and he really uses the aspect of Technicolor in a really specific way. Everybody's costumes has a kind of unnatural color to the fabric.
Like bruises, sort of, as well.
Everyone's skin tone is even a little off. Like, this world is a little...
It's very purpley.
It's
like super purple.
And then, of course, the neon sign through the window as it gets dark, blinking red and green, adding to the incredible tension of the film. So.
Yeah, that's crazy.
No, but that's very interesting. I thought of that about the costumes. They all looked they were purple. That's the only thing I can see. It's just bruised like David's neck.
Bergman was very conscious, I don't know if that's how you say it, conscious of that there was an audience there, like, with every scene. He just was very playful the whole time, and I know we're talking about the beginning, but, you know, if we jump to the end, when he comes in on the camera, like, filming Elizabeth, I believe, her face, it's just, it's so cool. It's like it's a film, but yet, you know, it's very playful, so it's kind of interactive in a sense.
Yeah.
Also, I've heard that, I haven't seen any of the other films that Bergman has directed, which I've heard they're all pretty amazing. But I've heard Persona is the one for general, like that attracts the most
wide audience.
Oh.
And that, you know, the other films are...
So it's like a gateway drug into into Bergman films. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think I get it because I actually did start one of his movies. I think it was the Wild Strawberry one. And I was kind of bored. I hate to say that. But
what's interesting is that, you know, up until this time, he had this reputation of being, you know, he's the director about existential angst and about, you know, Christians losing their way in a godless world.
Oh,
and,
I totally can see that.
And about, you know, having lost your faith. And his films had a reputation of being very, very dour and kind of, you know, solemn Swedish people kind of talking to each other as they walk along, you know, the windswept moors. And what's interesting is that there really haven't been too many echoes of the experimental or even playful nature that is on display in almost every frame of this movie.
Right.
And so it's interesting that this is like the Bergman film that's considered the like gateway because it's so unlike what I think are any of his others.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a gateway, but it's one that's preferred over most people. Like in the sense, like if they saw the other films, they'd be kind of like, this is boring, I'm not as into this. But the Persona one, I don't know, it's kind of edgy in the sense, like
very much so.
It's something that's still edgy and was edgy at that time.
Definitely.
I just, you know, it's such an original